And that was being misused by the agency. Being misused because certain other components were taking people when they were in the development branch and using them off the books. So the holding position, this gets even more complicated because there's another component called the position control branch. The position control branch, you're supposed to everything where everything an agent does is not in a position control branch, and then it's turned into numbers. So everything is like a number. So the guy gets, that's these guys. So they go abroad, they get a number. The station they go into is another number. Their pseudonym is another number. So the whole thing is just totally disguised. It's called actually the development complement branch, which is like a weird section. But getting into the real details of how these various bits of the agency work gives you an awful lot of virtues when you're researching people. Certainly helped me with Vesiana. I really got to understand what was going on with Vesiana. But you can't do that by just looking at trying to make sense of Vesiana's comments. And plus, of course, none of it's all denied by CIA, the whole exercise. They just say Vesiana existed on their books for just about a year. He was recruited as a source of information, as a peripheral contact, and then disposed of to the army, who then say they only used him for a very short space of time and didn't do much, all this baloney, really. We're expected to believe that this guy was a world-class terrorist, sat in a press conference in Washington, D.C. in March '63, talking about attacking Russian ships. Is of no interest or peripheral interest. Just nonsense, sheer nonsense. So that stuff, when you talk about disguise, cutting through that disguise got me into places with Vesiana that I couldn't get into.
Does it make you understand the documentation about him better?
Yeah, you can see behind a lot of when you follow the cable traffic on some of this stuff, it gives a clearer picture. Because you can't do that unless you understand some of the other stuff. You have to get a basics in. It's a big ask for a lot of people to get into their systems.
Yeah, it's like becoming part of the clique to understand what is actually happening within that clique.
Yeah, but the problem is, I knew Pete Bagley, the chief of counterintelligence for 6 years, CIA chief of counterintelligence, and Pete didn't have the slightest clue of what was going on with some of the, even with the next door component, which to him, Langley, which was the SR9, which was the Soviet Russian division. And this guy didn't know that stuff.
That points to a heavy command.
And then the nuts and bolts. He didn't know the nuts and bolts. I mean, obviously, he knew how to send a cable, provide a cable, and he knew very well how to write it. I mean, that's drummed into CIA officers that you have to use euphemistic language when you do this. And like everybody seems to be that's in the club seems to understand it, If you're not in it, you don't get it.
And on top of that, it's heavy compartmentalized as well.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
So now I just want to go back to the original question about the Scott Breckovich and the HSCA, like mainly.
He was a gatekeeper.
Robert Blake.
Yeah, he was a gatekeeper for the CIA. It was in a component called the Office of Legislative Council. He was the chief.
OLC.
LFC, and really any stuff that came in which was difficult to deal with was shuffled across to Scott Breckenridge. It was the end of the line, but the person in between, not in the first year or so, but in the second year of the HSCA was George Joannides. And
We all know what happened.
particularly on the Cuban stuff. I mean, he was the guy that was like shutting off stuff, and he was certainly shutting off researchers like Dan Hardway and Eddie Lopez for the HSCA. They suddenly found they were not getting the stuff that they should have got, and that was all part of the game, And
Them not knowing that actually Joannides was that closely connected to the whole thing.
not at all. Not at
And
all.
this-
I mean, that didn't come out until later.
Yeah.
You get G. Robert Blakey saying, they lied to me. Yeah, okay. I'll believe that.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of difference decades after. I mean,
No.
you can be pissy about it. What's his name? Dick Helms and the Warren Commission. What kind of connection was that? Because in one way they gave them information, but at the same time, they held a ton back, especially when it comes to
Cuba.
yeah, like it didn't exist, like it wasn't happening.
Well, yeah, the way they dealt with that was like, they weren't going to give anything they weren't answering. It's as simple as that. They didn't see that as being relevant.
NBR. Not really
An
relevant.
early form of NBR,
Yeah,
not really relevant.
It's been a term that's been used in the nineties a lot. So, and when we talk about the ARB, I don't know too much about it. That's why this question's been open. What details about the interactions between the agency and the ARB from that time?
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah,
something positive.
yeah, it's very positive. The relationship, well, you have to go to who the part of CIA that the review board was dealing with was the Historical Review Group, which was formed in 1992, I think, as a result of Director Gates, Robert Gates, probably in response to the Stone Pit, the JFK from all of the Stone.
J. Barry Harrelson.
Yeah. Let me think about the original. Yeah, I think. Who came first? Yeah, J. Barry Harrelson was the first person in charge of that, I think. And then he was followed by John Herrera. In the relationship, I mean, I think if there was any component of CIA that was cooperative with a government body and that's trying to get documents released, I think it was the Historical Review Group. They really did put some effort in. I mean, obviously they were under a lot of pressure from the Director of Operations not to release a lot of stuff on Mexico City, which was to do with mainly intercepts and stuff like that, and wiretapping, and they were reluctant to give over some of the facts that the CIA was bugging everybody in Mexico City. Everybody, even friends and foe alike, everybody was bugged. That's right. And their relationship with obviously the Mexican security services, that was a big no. They tried to, and I think that there's an element of that that still exists today. They're very reluctant to give up their intergovernment intelligence relationships. But you don't have to be a genius to work out it. It was a very close relationship with the Mexican security service. Yeah.
I mean, I never knew, but I only found out during the course of digitizing your archive is actually how much documentation there is on Mexico City itself. Not just the feds, but the DOJ and the State Department, and then of course the Central Intelligence Agency.
And that's a tiny snapshot, because I've got this sort of like hatred of Mexico City. I don't like to go there.
You said it's a swamp.
It's just one thing. And John Newman, of course, my friend John Newman, told me it's a swamp, but I've got to get into it. I've never subscribed to them. I almost see it as like a diversion, and I've never really. I mean, I've copied stuff, as you've seen, but not so much for me, but for other people.
Yeah,
Coming
I mean, I've shared it to quite a few
Yeah,
individuals,
yeah.
and I was like, you lot can figure that puzzle out, because I'm not getting involved, but the bits that I did read, the whole Laredo thing already, especially also being on that bus and hanging about this, that, and the other, but there was very little support in the shape of evidence for that actually happening and such.
Yeah, the very early documents are really fascinating on the journey, on the alleged journey, how he got into Mexico City and how he exited.
The bus.
Just an enormous, I swear,
Yeah, of course.
cluster of
Yeah,
all over the place.
yeah,
You just don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
First, and 24, 48 hours. They're trying to get this story right, and you can't get it. You can see it in the document.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the documents was an FBI document where basically the FBI agents listened to the tapes on the evening of November 22nd and went right away, that's not Oswald, it's bullshit, you're not there and then. That away, and of course that document was deep six, that's for quite some time, although in between like forum posts and maybe mentioned in a book here or there, but it was kind of enlightening to see the document.
The guy that took the tapes was Eldon Rudd, and he denied up and down he ever took any tapes. And later on, when the HSCA was sitting, they tried to get Eldon Rudd to appear and testify, and he refused, because at that time he was a congressman. Congressman Eldon Rudd absolutely refused. You've got that document in the refusal in there in the collection.
Yeah.
They wrote it down and they said, apparently if you work for, if you're a congressman or something, you're not obliged to testify. So,
I mean, I
couldn't sit him down and nail it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, from all the stuff that I went through in your collection, I think the FBI documents are the best or the most telling, let me just say that. And that's because the fact that it's just a very serious bureaucratic organization and just actually write everything down as such. And they probably tried to get rid of things, but on the other hand, there's still stuff that has come out. And for me, the finds that I found, but also relating to other things, Cuba, other things, and go, if you want telling stuff that will help you in your research, the FBI for me is the way to go, because them being such a bureaucratic organization, and they don't talk in euphemistic language as a central intelligence agency does. I mean, not as much. I don't get that vibe as such.
And those early documents are quite, I think, could be important for people doing research because of the, as you say, the bureaucratic process where you turn the document over and the timestamp, date stamp, and then you can work out where they went and who they went to.
Yes.
And
You send me one of those documents. The stamp on
the timings are so important.
Yeah,
they tell us to be very important.
Yeah, they tell us to, and of course all the scribbles in between. Some of the documents are basically mutilated with stamps and scribbles.
Hoover scribble,
which is and Tolson, and all these guys, all the top guys. And then of course what people also need to understand is that there are Dallas files, but there's also Washington files, and there is a difference in the sense that
there's a big difference, there's a lot of, well, you get the general files, which are a lot of files. JFK investigation, the 89 files, the 105 files, the 100 files. And these are big, quite big collections on their own. But then you go into field office files. And that's massive. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of boxes field office files. But the most important field office is the Washington Metropolitan Field Office, because they were the people that were right at the top of everything. You know, they were especially interested in anything that was controversial or sensitive, political stuff. They were really into all that stuff. So that's a really good set of files to look at. WMFO, the Washington Metropolitan Field Office.
Since we're talking FBI files, what are the bulkies?
The bulkies, yeah, bulkies are a fantastic resource. And when I first went to the archives, they weren't present. You know, they had every other file in it, everything was in paper. So like you go through the 3-ring binders and find your way through, and it's pretty good. You find a way FBI files in there. Mainly, early on, I was looking at FBI files exclusively, nothing else. And then I don't know. I was like somebody mentioned the name Ivan Conrad to me, who was in charge of the FBI labs, and so there was a new girl in the archives, new archivist. And I said to her, somebody's mentioned Ivan Conrad, and she said, oh, we got those boxes, 6 boxes. They're in the bulkies, FBI bulkies. Never heard of it. It's not in the finding aids. Anyway, that whole finding aid still didn't find its way into the research room at Nara at all. They didn't let go of it. And then the review board pushed their stuff out, and I went through the review board files, and in the best resource was Ron Harron, who came from the Department of Justice into the review board, and he looked at everything, and then he copied everything, and everything went into his file. And there was the bulkies index, the FBI bulkies index. And so I got that, and I was able to, and it's a marvelous resource for so many things.
Oh, some of it, we discussed it yesterday. We were in our room and we were discussing, and all of a sudden I was like, do I have this? And I checked my database basically with it, and it's a 64-page document, and it's gold nugget after gold nuggets when it comes to media or documentation. It is amazing.
It's an unbelievable resource.
It's my first source if I ever going to investigate it now, and that's my thing.
Well, especially from your point of view, because there's so much photographic stuff in there.
Yeah.
You know, you get
it's amazing. Negatives and that original stuff.
Original.
Yeah.
And well, eventually they did put it into the research room. So after seeing that I had a copy of it, it suddenly appeared. So, and then later, John Hunt came and did a lot of research in those files, in the Vulcan files, a lot of good research. And a couple of other people dug into it, but really it's a resource that's not used, really.
But I find this the case overall when it comes to, here are people researching for a book and spend maybe a day or two at Nara, and of course get very frustrated by the process that it actually involves. It's incredibly frustrating. I had a friend of mine going there trying to obtain some negatives from from Nara, and the first time he just came across it just like that, innocently. And then while trying to get back into it, it just proved such an laborious process of just getting access to it again. And he gave up, and he called it a crock of shit, just the way it just went down there, and incredibly frustrating. You've documented before that, to me, previous interviews that you said they're not as generous as they used to be when it comes to.
No, that's when the review board was sitting. That was the golden age, because we just take things for granted, but that was when they really cooperated with researchers at the National Archives. And they were proactive for a few years when the review board was sitting. then everything went back to the old ways after they went, after people went out. Then they went back to their usual sloth-like stuff, difficult. I mean, there are some individual archivists that were very helpful. James Mathis particularly was very helpful to me initially. Although we had a major frank exchange of views to do with the Warren Commission. In 2004, James did a massive interfile into the Warren Commission files. Massive. And this was going on very quietly. I didn't know this until afterwards. So when I discovered that, I said to him, "Where's the index? You've got all these new interfiles, all these previously withheld documents, and you've shoved them into the files. Where's the index?" Oh, he said, "There's no index." I said, "Do you mean I've got to go through 440 boxes to look for the new stuff again?" And he said, "Well, you can make a negative template. You can go onto our website, see everything that's withdrawn, and then make your own index." So there you go. That's really helpful. It's really helpful. But I mean, I guess he was like hesitant because I actually got him when he first appeared at the archives. The CIA segregated files from microfilm. They came in and there was no index. And so I really did bitch about that. I really complained about that. And he eventually provided an index. Get this, 24 boxes of rips for those files. 24 boxes. He didn't do a proper index.
So we just put the riffs in there.
He put the riffs in there. So you have to go, but at least it's not through hundreds of boxes. It's only 24 boxes. So that's the sort of stuff you have to deal with at a national archive. It's not an easy process.
No.
It's not user-friendly.
Well, we've got a few minutes left. Yesterday, when Larry Schnapp was speaking to us, you had a little, at the end of the conversation, you had a few questions, this, that, and the other. You're mentioning the HSCA files that are, or HSCA index. Some of it is redacted. What else can you tell us about it?
Yeah, that's a real strange one because I'm trying to think. I'm pretty sure it's 3 boxes, 3 grey file boxes, which are like this. And it's their document register. It's where everything was recorded.
Done, yeah.
Yeah, everything was recorded. Everything that came in, all the people they interviewed, all sorts of stuff, letters, any amount of stuff, memos, and it's horrendously redacted. And I asked at the National Archives, like, why is this redacted? You don't get wishy-washy replies. Nobody seemed to know who was doing the redacting of that. I mean, there must be, I would think, an agency handling a CIA.
Well, this is basically to prevent, to know what's actually available from a documentary point of view, like the collection itself. Yeah, I mean, can't see it any other way, because the HSCA went a lot further than most people actually tend to think, because especially at first there wasn't that much documentation, and then from the 90s onwards stuff was getting released and stuff. But that's kind of more.
Yeah, I think within those files, if we could get access to the complete index, then a lot of it would probably be witnesses that we could read their, ask for their statements, their testimony and stuff like that, which we haven't seen yet. Although, to be fair, I think they've increased the boxes the number files, the HSCA number files, and you've got a lot of those documents, were they were 302 boxes, so they're now around 320 of them. So there's an 18 box increase to look at.
She's been stuffed in.
Interplat, yeah, interplat. That's the
And basically, I feel like
yeah,
this
stuff there.
you have to go through it all over again and basically compare it to what was there before.
Yeah, that reminds me when you say stuff there. You know, one of the best set of files was the Warren Commission files, entry number 44. Entry number 44 are the office files and stuff, where you get Slaughton's notes, you know, all the Lieber's notes, you get all these guys, all these staffers, all their handwritten notes. And they used to be quite like boxes, but there was not much in them. And then during obviously the interfile process that James Mathis did, those, you know, they're so stuffed. They're really heavy. They're stuffed full of, you know, all the stuff they redacted. You know, I went through Slaughton's files and they were very interesting files.
We've got some.
Yeah, but the problem was they changed the paper at Nara. This is a technical detail for it. They changed the paper to a pale blue. And a lot of Slaughton's writing is in pencil. You try and copy that stuff
Gray
on
and
this
blue.
blue paper.
Yeah.
It's not
Not for black and white reproduction.
Yeah, it needs to be white paper.
It's like writing on red paper, same thing, yeah. On this note, we're gonna happily end this conversation. Is there anyone who's got a question by any chance? Yeah, Neil?
Yeah, just as far as documentation is concerned, what advice would you give a Nara virgin if you're going to go and look at documents?
I'll tell you that.
And secondly,
He wants to know what it is like for somebody who's basically to go to Nara as a full virgin and doesn't know, have a clue what to go for.
how to spend and the process before that.
Big question.
I
But
would,
so, I mean, we can do it in break if you want, but just what do you need to do beforehand?
the finder there.
Beforehand, before you pitch up.
Yeah, do your homework. Yeah, do your homework.
The finder's aid.
Yeah, with the finder's aid, just try and find as much as you can.
Yeah.
I think more of it's on, obviously, more of it's online.
Yeah. I find that site terrible.
All papers, yeah.
In the Malcolm Blunt archive, there's a folder called Nara, and in Nara is a folder called, it's either called records or it's called finder's aids. And in that folder are multiple documents that has 20 to 50 pages long, and it just describes. So this is just a matter of basically trawling through the documents and go, what is piquing my interest and so forth, and basically just start.
Yeah, I mean,
taking
it's got
notes.
specific info.
Yeah,
I didn't start with that. I mean, I started with IMAX, you know, and I continue with IMAX, you know, for whatever reason. I mean, my friend in Florida, in Miami, Gordon Winslow, asked me what I was doing at the archives, and I said, I'm looking at everything. And he said, you're nuts. He was an archivist at the Dade County Archives. He said, you're nuts, you can't do that. But to be honest, I found it suited me. Probably because in a way I'm a very selfish person as far as doing research. Although I share the research, I'm not doing the end product. I'm not doing a book. The only book I had was a book of interviews with Alan Bear. That's it. You know, I haven't got the discipline or the ability or the talent to write a book. He has. I have.
I don't. David.
You mentioned earlier the euphemisms and the numerical codes, so
You mentioned the euphemism there, because
CIA euphemism.
you speak up a little.
Yeah, sorry, Mark. You mentioned CIA euphemistic language,
Yeah.
and you also mentioned how everything is listed, or numerical codes for agents, stations, locations. During the many years you've been doing this and coming across all of this, have you been compiling any form of dictionary or code book? You know, you come across Mexico Station, like, have you got listings of these, have you got?
Well, if you start with the end product is a position control register, which is in position control branch inside CIA. That's the equivalent, and a review board couldn't make headway with that. They called it the Dead Sea Scrolls. It's really difficult. You know, they couldn't get beyond the numbers.
Okay,
They actually, you can find, was it in the 2017 release? They released 162 pages. It doesn't tell you anything because it's all numbers. Numbers. You can't get behind that. And they rightly called it the Dead Sea Scrolls. If you could get behind those numbers individually, for individual people, you'd have the contents of the shop, because you know where they were, what they were doing, what, you know, just all the pseudonyms, their aliases, everything. You just can't get there.
this has remained impenetrable then, you've not managed to find a.
Sure, yeah, but you could get sort of bits in between,
Okay.
you know. For me, the development component branch was a really interesting exercise, because I'd seen that on documents, but I hadn't really got into it. And I never got the documents. Somebody, an Australian researcher, sent them to me. Thank God. And then I went through the development component, and then you could see that's such a great, that's a great resource to understand how things worked inside. You know, the very fact that you could have agents coming in, and they were held in this state of flux, and then utilized off the books. That was an interesting discovery for me.
Could I just follow up slightly?
Go on.
To that? Have you ever discussed any of this, Malcolm, with John Newman?
Have you discussed any of this with John Newman?
Or had any exchange?
No, I mean, John's busy.
Okay,
He's busy with the book. He's just finished uncovering Popov's mole, which should be out soon.
Yeah.
I thought it was supposed to be out middle of September, but
It's just finished the proof copy,
oh right,
cover and all that. Yeah, I posted on Facebook about 4 or 5 days ago.
oh, he's running late.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, that's very
But
undrawn.
then he's got the next book, the next part of his volume 5, which is Armageddon. The title on that was Armageddon, but it's really, you know, this latest book has been a nightmare. You know, it started off as being just part of the book, you know, a chapter, and then it got expanded. We talked to John and said, look, this is going to be a book, not a chapter.
is this going to be part of volume 4 or something?
So we did it, and then of course when you started, you realise, you know, it was a much bigger thing. It's a very important book. This latest book is a very important book, because it blows a whistle on a lot of agency stuff which has been withheld.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay.